Hey folks, Dino here again. This time with another bootleg from everyone's favourite model kit bootleg company, King Dong. I will never get tired of hearing that name. But yeah, this is the King Dong GTO, or Gundam The Origin, is the actual name of it. And yeah, this is the RX-782, as seen in, I think it was quite recent, that they remade, basically, or tweaked the story, at least, of the original Gundam. I am still looking into it myself, so apologies if my knowledge isn't 100% on it. My main knowledge is Gundam Wing, but I got this guy because, I mean, if you're collecting Gunpla model kits, you basically have to have the granddaddy of all Gundams. This is the original version. Well, no, this one's not quite the original version. This is like an updated take on the design. But you can make it basically look like the original, with some extra details. But yeah, this model kit was an absolute pain to get hold of. I ordered on AliExpress from 3 separate sellers. 2 of them just didn't bother selling it. They just didn't send it at all. I had to get my money back. This one, even though I ordered through the choice system on AliExpress, which basically means they collect it from the seller and send it to you, expedited shipping, so you should be getting it within 7 days. But yeah, the seller just held on to this for an entire week before AliExpress could get a hold of it, which completely defeats the purpose of choice. But yeah, enough of my moaning and complaining. Let's take a look at the box of this guy. So yeah, I mean, we would take a look at the box, except AliExpress in their wisdom has put the sticker on the front of the box. Seriously, AliExpress. That's the one thing about using the choice program, is you never know where the sticker's going to go. I assume it's AliExpress that puts it on, because if I order normally, this sticker isn't on there. So yeah, unfortunately, that's right in front of the nice box art, which is basically copied straight from the official. I think this is a bootleg of the high grade Gundam GTO, Gundam The Origin, because I recognise the box art. But yeah, the name obviously has been replaced from Bandai to the XD logo for King Dong, XD 026 up the top, and high grade up the top left. The box did not survive very well in shipping. It's quite bashed, and in fact the sprues in the box were kind of warped, so I'm kind of lucky nothing broke. Although I suspect either the box is responsible for the issues I'm going to speak about the model kit itself, or it's just poor plastic quality, one way or another. But yeah, some pictures here showing the 2 variants of the suit. However, you can make a third variant, which I personally have done. I'll go over that in more detail. Nice render of it on the side. There's that box art there. Nice. You'll notice there is some extra detail on there. I'll talk about that in a minute. And some detailing of everything that comes in the box. So yeah, overall decent enough box. It is a bootleg though, so I don't suspect many people will be keeping the box. So in terms of accessories, he actually comes with a lot, like really a lot. He comes with 3 sets of hands, So he's got the standard gripping hands on him by default. You also get some nice sort of almost relaxed hands, which I will say the backs of these hands, at least for the relaxed ones, were an absolute nightmare to stay on, so those have been glued. But they do look nice. There's a bit of excess flashing in between the fingernails, just the fingers in general. So yeah, bear that in mind. And you also get a pair of dedicated trigger finger hands on top of the standard grippy hands, which are mostly just made for his beam sabers. So yeah, nicely detailed and get a nice trigger finger to them. So yeah, in terms of the beam sabers, since we're here, they actually store on his backpack, at least in this configuration. This is the configuration I like to call the OG version, because of course there's two different options that they give you, because of course Gundam the Origin is a sort of retelling of the story, so the Gundam looks a bit different depending on which version you go with. So yeah, you get two beam sabers, standard sort of basic lacking detail beam sabers. We're used to all that. You also get, instead of green, you get a sort of purple coloured beam saber. You get two of them, which is nice. They do have a bit of bubbling inside the plastic, which is a bit of a shame, but I mean, it's not terrible that it's going to be noticeable on your shelf or anything like that, so never mind. You get his shield, which I personally have modified it my own way. This is supposed to go up and down on a rail, but it's far too loose. It just constantly falls off. So I just glued it in the middle, and I took off the handle that you're supposed to put in there in order for him to sort of hold it. But the way they've set it up, I mean, you could do exactly as I've done and glue it in place in the middle, and what happens is you click it into place just on the back of his forearm, and it fits perfectly fine. And yet, depending on the version that you're building, the shield is either upside down or right side up, because it's got a swivel on the mechanism itself. Works perfectly fine. You can just swivel it that way. So yeah, the handle itself is completely superfluous. Same with the sort of guide rails that they put on this. So yeah, that's what I personally done. Your mileage may vary. He also comes with a nice big rifle. This is shoulder mounted, so what you do is you take off this side, which is just held in place with a peg, and you pop that in instead, and you have a nice big shoulder mounted cannon, which makes them look quite badass. I don't believe that is part of the original suit design. That's in Gundam the Origin. They call it the early type, which I'm guessing is its first design in the movie. Like I said, I haven't watched the movie yet. I do plan on doing so. Well, I say movie, it's more like a series of OVAs, isn't it? Yeah, you get two beam rifles. You get what they call the early type, which is a big bulky thing with what I can only assume is an ammo or energy cartridge down the bottom here. The sight goes from side to side. It's quite loose, unfortunately, But yeah, you could just keep it up at top and keep it out of the way. With this one, you get a handle that pops out on the side, and you get a peg on this side, which you can then use to store on one of the many ports on this Gundam. You can store it on his backside, you can store it on his backpack, you can even store it on the back of his arms. And you can, in fact, even store it on the back of the shield. So yeah, works just fine regardless. There we go. So yeah, pop that back out. You get the beam rifle for his upgraded middle type, which is much more in line with what we see with beam rifles these days. Nice and thin. You get a moving foregrip, moving sight, and another peg that pops out, which you can again store on any part of the Gundam, which is good. Finally, for weapons, he comes with, I believe they call it the Hyper Bazooka, which is very nice. It's a lot of colour separated plastic. Unfortunately, the sight on this one, even though they've done it for the two rifles, like this one they've decided it's just going to be a sticker. You also get a sticker for down the barrel, which, because it's white, kind of looks weird. But yeah, just slots into his hand like so. That moves slightly. You get a handle here as well, but most of the time he uses it sort of sit here holding it with his arm. So yeah, you also get the different parts to turn him into the early type, as I said. I believe this is back to front, but I also believe that the sprue, for whatever reason, is reversed compared to the official, because this bit here, I'll just show you quickly. It pops off and technically goes into either side, but if you look there, it doesn't actually fit properly. It sort of struts out a little bit, whereas if you put it on this side, it doesn't. It fits perfectly on that side, which is a bit strange. You also get a pair of tiny little Gatling lasers. Those mount onto his chest piece at the top. On either side, you just pop that off, pop the little laser thing in, and then pop that bit on the top. So it looks as if it's popping up the top. And I just lost a bit. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. Sorry, folks. Always fun when things fall out of your hand and straight into the carpet monster. There we go. So that fits right back in there, just like so. You also get a pair of replacement forearms. Like I said, I've sort of made my own build here. I prefer the extra bit of detail down the bottom. I didn't even bother taking them off the sprue because they are kind of small pieces. But you do get replacement parts for his shoulder. They have like an extra sticking out peg, which fully turns it into the middle part, as they call it. But like I said, I wanted this to look more like the original anime design, so I kept the flat shoulders, but gave him the extra detail in the forearms and such, and left this out. So yeah, you really can build it whatever way you want. It's that simple. This being a bootleg, also came with a cheap little stand, which, I mean, it's decent enough. We've seen this before with the Wing Gundam bootleg. Just slots over his crotch, like so. There we go. And holds him in place nicely. It's tight enough, not overly tight, but yeah. reason I haven't really put the extra stickers on, because he gets a massive sticker sheet. The real version of this figure comes with the sort of see-through stickers, which they typically see on real grades. But this one, being a bootleg, actually came with water decals, which I am not too confident with water decals. I have not used them in a long time, so I didn't bother doing it before the review. But you do get them, so bear that in mind if you want that extra detail. But yeah, mine will just be staying as is. So yeah, let's take a quick look at the figure now, and I'll finally get into the issues that I'm having. Is that, yeah, either the white plastic is poorly formed, bad quality, or being in transit and getting bumped about a lot has sort of weakened it. But yeah, as you can see, the panel lining that I've done has actually formed like hairline fractures in the plastic. That isn't smudges, these extra bits here. That's actual cracks in the plastic. And there's a bit up here as well, some on the back. I mean, it's pretty poor, honestly. Whether it's AliExpress's fault or the actual King Dong itself, their fault with the plastic, I do not know. I'm inclined to think it's because of transit, obviously because I have the Wing Gundam bootleg from the same company, and it doesn't have any of the issues that this one has. But yeah, just something to keep in mind if you do decide to purchase this. There will be a link in the description, obviously. There always is on my videos these days. But yeah, overall, the details on the figure are really good. Like, there's no flashing to speak of, apart from on those hands that I mentioned. But yeah, apart from the cracking issue that I'm having, the figure itself looks phenomenal, especially with the panel lining on it. There's some really nice details. One thing I will say to King Dong that they really should sort is their eye stickers. These ones are pretty poor. They're really wide and look strange. I managed to get them into a position where they look semi-decent, but yeah, something I hope they take into consideration. But yeah, onto articulation, and this guy has a lot of good articulation points. Like, honestly, this is basically a real grade without the inner skeleton. And even at that, there is a lot of colour separated inner parts to this. So yeah, maybe that's why King Dong had a bit of trouble bootlegging it. I really don't know. But yeah, the head is actually on a ball peg with a hinge, and a ball peg underneath the hinge, so it can look up without popping the entire thing up. Can look up that far, can look down that far, swivel, bit of pivot side to side, and there is a back and forth joint right there. There is a little bit of articulation at the back here with the beam sabers, but you want to just keep them in place. It's hard enough to keep them upright the way that's done. I do have a bit of a loose butterfly joint here, unfortunately, but when you're using the butterfly joint and such, it gets really far forward. With the arm, absolutely no issues with swivel. Can go out that far. Can go actually up a wee bit if you use the inner joint. Swivel at the bicep. The bicep seemingly loves to pop apart over time, so be careful with that. Double joint at the elbow gets near enough the full 180, and ball joint at the wrist. Now, chest, you can't go up really, but you can go forward. That is a really good joint that they've added in there. He gets better range than Figure Arts, honestly. With that, you just pop that in place, and there is a ball joint at the waist, which gets a lot of movement and swivels and such. These front skirt flaps, they are connected together on the sprue, but you can cut them in half to have them both move independently. So leg can go up that far. You can go back a little bit, but it is impeded because the back skirt is one solid piece. Side skirt can sort of get out the way, not perfectly well, but it does do it, and you can pretty much do the splits anyway because of how the hips are positioned, which is very nice. That joint does have a swivel there as well. Pop that back up. He has single joint there, but you can also pop a secret double joint out of position, and you get really good range there. You will see once I pop this together, there's a nice little snap there once you use it. So a little trick that you can do to hide the joint is physically pop that out of place and then put the top joint back into position, and that way the kneecap hides the grey joint, which is really good. Feet are okay. They don't really go down any. They go up slightly. They do go that far pivot and that far back the way. That's a sort of floating piece. And he does have toe articulation, which is a first. Usually the feet on Gundams go down the way, not up. But yeah, this guy has some extra added details. So yeah, overall, I know I was a bit negative with this figure to start, but it really is a good bootleg. I mean, for a £5, I can see past the issues with it. There is a different type of bootleg out there on AliExpress with this exact same mould from a company called O12. So be mindful. Both have their pros and both have their cons. I believe some parts of O12 are a lot looser than this one, but then the O12 has better eyes. That's pretty much it's got going for it. But yeah, guys, overall, you can't really go wrong with this. It's a really nice little figure. It will look good on your shelf. It's a bit more plain compared to more modern Gundams or even Gundam Wing Gundams, but I mean, it's the grandfather of basically all Gundams that came after it, so it deserves a spot on your shelf, whether that be bootleg or otherwise. So yeah, guys, as I said before, link down in the description if you want to purchase this guy, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. So, till next time, guys, I'll see y'all later.